Magistrate. Then, then I'm calling to order a code enforcement hearing of the City of Cape Canaveral. Today's date is the 25th of October, 2022. My name is Richard Geller, and I'm Special Magistrate appointed by the City Council to hear code enforcement cases pursuant to Article 6 of the City Code and Florida Statutes Chapter 162. These will be quasi-judicial evidentiary proceedings, one of which I'll explain in a bit, is known as a Massey hearing. The burden of proof in all these proceedings is upon the city to show by a preponderance of evidence that a code violation exists or continues to exist. In other words, I will determine based on the evidence presented to me this evening whether it is more likely than not that a code violation occurs, or in the case of a Massey proceeding, whether the violation continues to occur, in which case I would impose fines. The alleged violator will have an opportunity to submit any rebuttal or exculpatory evidence, including testimony. At my discretion, I may allow a member of the public with relevant personal knowledge to testify, even if not called by either party. That is either by the city or the responding party. Anyone who would like to testify should so indicate. You can raise your hand and let me know. Upon request, an alleged violator may ask relevant and material questions of any city witness, and the same goes vice versa. The city may ask any relevant and material questions of any witness for a responding party. I may exclude evidence that I deem irrelevant, material, or unduly repetitious. In determining the amount of any fine, and again, that is for a Massey hearing, of which we do have one on the agenda, I will consider the gravity of the violation, any actions taken by the violator to correct the violation, and any previous violations committed by the violator. Under the city code and the Florida statutes, I may assess an order payment of a fine of up to $250 per day per violation for a first violation, and up to $500 per day for a repeat violation. And although this is very rare, up to $5,000 for a violation that is irreparable or irreversible, as well as the cost of any repairs made by the city. At the conclusion of each hearing, I will issue findings of fact and conclusions of law based on the evidence in the record, as well as an order, and I will do so here on the bench, and then I will follow it up. My aim is tomorrow to issue orders in writing. The city will record a certified copy of any order imposing a fine, which will become a lien against the land where the violation occurs, as well as upon any real or personal property owned by the violator. Any order that I issue may be appealed by any party, by either the responding party or the city, to the circuit court for Brevard County within 30 days. It is the responsibility of the appealing party to obtain a record of these proceedings. And you should know that any appeal would be limited to the record that is presented to me this evening. I've signed and approved of the minutes for the hearings that were held on August 23rd, 2022. And also I will announce that the next special magistrate hearings will be held on January 25th, 2023. The city will be skipping November and December. So at this point, I would ask if there is anyone who expects to testify on any matter, any of the matters on the agenda. If you would please be sworn in. Please stand and do you swear that the testimony that you will give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you all very much. The first case on the agenda is case number 2018-213. It alleges a violation of section 94-121D for non-conforming signs. The property owners are indicated to be Arthur W. Berger Jr. and Jean Benson as trustees. And if you would just identify yourself for the record, and city may proceed.
Senior Code Enforcement Officer Brian Palmer.
Thank you.
Address is 8660 Astronaut, and Legals on the board, plus IDs on the board, violations for non-conforming signs. This violation was sent on 6/15/2018 with a return receipt of 6/17/2018 to Arthur Berger and Jeannie Benson, sorry. Notice of hearing was sent on 10/14/2022 and a return receipt of 10/17/2022 to the same individual. And this is the property in question. This is a quick overview of the Article 4 non-conforming signs, which is Section 94-121 non-conforming signs. On September 16th of 2014, the City Council revised the city sign code ordinance to address non-conforming signs within the city. Section 94-121 of the ordinance states all signs or outdoor displays which are lawfully erected but do not conform to the ordinance will be considered non-conforming signs. The intent is to phase out non-conforming signs as expeditiously and fairly as possible. On December 2nd of 2015, letters were sent out to property owners outlining the types of nonconformities which were to be corrected by September 16th of 2016. And this letter was sent out by the building official, and it's been a while, so probably don't necessarily remember this going out, the recipients.
And if I just stop you there for one moment, is there any list of who received that letter? So there's some indication that the letter did get to the respondents?
There is. I don't have it with me tonight.
Okay.
But there is a list of everyone that got it back in 2016.
Okay.
And it was, the 2016 letter was, we started with the A18 corridor here, and we sent it to everyone along the A18 corridor.
Okay, and this property is along the A1A corridor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
The city code defines a pole sign as a sign that is supported by one or more exposed vertical supports of any shape, which are comprised of steel or other corrosive alloys. It also gives two examples as shown on the screen. These are two examples of a pole sign. City code defines a pylon sign as a sign that is supported by one or more exposed vertical supports, which are encased with a single non-corrosive decorative cover. Non-corrosive decorative cover shall mean any material suitable for installation as a pole sign cover in accordance with industry standards and material and workmanship. Applied over and attached to the supporting poles, including all attachments and fasteners thereto, which shall contain no steel or other corrosive alloys. Such pole sign cover shall have a minimum width of not less than 1 1/2 times the depth of the cabinet, but not less than 12 inches, and maximum depth equal to the depth of the sign cabinet. An example of the pole sign, or a pylon sign, sorry, is on the screen. Now, what does that all say? A pylon sign, how is it different? It's different by the width of the support. It's also different by, it's a single non-corrosive covering on that support. On July 20th of 2018, the property owner / contractor applied for a permit to convert the pole sign into a pylon sign. This was after he received a notice violation. He did apply for a permit. On January 20th of 2019, that permit expired without any work being completed. On October 3rd of 2019, staff sent a letter to the property owner / contractor informing them the permit had expired. October 8th of 2019, expired permit was reopened by the property owner / contractor.
Can you keep that that slide on? I want to get these dates down. So October 3rd is the letter that the permit expired.
Yes.
And then on October 8th, 2019, reopened the permit. 6/30/20. So we have one non-conforming sign brought into compliance. And 12/28/20, another expiration. And then 9/19/22, a reopening.
Yes, and the city can provide you with this slide.
Okay, thank you.
This is the pole sign as
Yeah.
it stands today. You can see below the actual, where the sign actually is, there is two vertical supports,
Mhm.
making it a pole sign.
So in order to make this sign conforming, you could not have the two supports on the side. You would need to have one support in the middle. Is that correct?
They have to be wrapped into a single non-corrosive cover.
Could they, like looking in the background at the Radisson sign, could they just wrap the whole thing going all the way down to the ground to make the whole sign appear to be a monument sign?
They could, we've only requested him to wrap the bottom portion of the sign enclosing the two poles. You can see the square in the middle of the sign. That's where a future tenant sign will be placed.
Okay.
So at that point in time, the sign won't look any, it won't look like a pole sign at all. All he needs to do to come into compliance with the notice of violation is to wrap the two poles underneath
Got it.
the main sign area.
Okay.
And we have, I have spoken with him. He does have someone that's going to come out and wrap those for him.
Okay.
So he does, we've already discussed it in the times exactly what needs to be done and everything. He acknowledges that he does know. And I would like to, ask him if he wants to speak, so he can step up.
Sure. Yeah. Could you just wait till you get to the microphone so that way everything you say is on the
No
record?
problem.
And if
My
you please-
name's Arthur Berger.
Okay.
Uh,
Berger, that's how you spell? Okay.
I appreciate the city reminding me. Right now, we have 5 permits on the building as it is. We're in the process of completely resurfacing including the elevator. And the reason we haven't filled in the top of much of the farm is because we vacated everybody on the second floor. There's no one else there now because the new roof has to go in. And as far as filling in the bottom and wrapping that, we cut the sign off to the right height, redid the electrical, and we just left it. And I didn't realize, hey, we should go ahead and just finish that part out.
Okay.
So when I was thinking to bring to my attention, it was brought to my attention, immediately we got the permit. I've got a guy scheduled to come out and look at it and do it.
Great. So permit has been issued by the city to do the wrapping?
The whole, to finish up the thing. Because the first one, as the gentleman said, we finished the first one. The second one, we held off. Because there is no permit.
Okay, so I'm just concerned about the non-conforming sign. So on that one okay, so a permit has been issued for the non-conforming sign. Is that correct? Do you know the date of that permit? Great.
The date was 10/8.
Okay.
Was the original date. The new one expires on March 19th, 23. And let me see the study.
But I would think you would expect to have the sign work done,
Prior to that.
and at least my order is would require that. And then you said that a contractor is scheduled to do the corrective
No,
work?
I have a contractor that'll do the aluminum coming out. And then he'll order the panel.
Okay.
And
So-
we're backlogged on aluminum. Up to 6 weeks, 3 weeks, and all things like this. And sometimes longer.
Okay.
Supplying them in.
And who is the contractor who
There's got Keystone aluminum, and his name is Steve Watt.
how do you spell the last name?
BREEZE.
B-R-U Bruck, Steve Bruck of
And
Keystone
he's
Aluminum.
worked with me for,
Great.
so
Okay.
he'll get out there.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Mr. Palmer, anything further the city would like to add to its presentation or any recommendation?
Based on testimony and evidence submitted at this hearing, staff respectfully request the magistrate to find the respondent in violation of the notice of violation and give the respondent until the city is going to amend this to state, give the respondent until the end of the permit, because he does
Okay.
have an active permit. So the end of the current active permit, they bring the property into compliance.
Okay, and that was,
And I can get you that date.
sure, and I
I'm
think
sorry,
you may have said it on the records, March 19?
Yeah.
March 19. That sounds like a more than reasonable opportunity to deal with aluminum backlogs and all that, so, all right. Anything else before I issue my order?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to issue some findings of fact, some conclusions of law, and I'm going to issue an order. I find that the respondents own the subject property as trustees, that there is a non-conforming pole sign on the property. I find that the city revised the sign code on September 16, 2014 to prohibit pole signs. And in section 94-121 provided for the amortization or a period of time in which to bring non-conforming pole signs into compliance. I find that a letter was sent to the respondents on December 2nd, 2015, outlining the nonconformities that were on the property and requiring correction by September 16, 2016. Find that a notice of violation was dated June 12th, actually June 15, was served with the return on June 17th, and that a notice of hearing for today was served on October 14 with a return on October 17. I find that there has been a permit application submitted to turn the nonconformity into a conforming sign. I find that the notices provided by the city do comply with section 2-253 of the city code, as well as Florida statutes chapter 162.06 and 162.12. You make some additional findings of law. I find that the city lawfully enacted its sign regulations in a narrowly tailored, content-neutral manner, based on my review of the ordinance, to improve the city's aesthetics, which I find to be a legitimate government interest. I find that the amortization of nonconforming signs within the city's jurisdiction was done in a fair and reasonable manner, and that the respondent has had more than 6 years from the ordinance's enactment to either remove, replace, or retrofit the nonconforming pole sign. I find that as it currently stands, that the pole sign, the double pole sign on the subject property is in violation of section 94-121 of the city code. However, I find that the respondents are engaged in good faith efforts to correct the nonconformity. Having obtained a permit and making arrangements with an aluminum contractor to look at the nonconformity within the next week and order the necessary materials and to make the correction. So I'm going to order that the respondents have until the end of the permit period, which is March 19, 2023, to bring the subject property into full compliance with Section 94-121 of the City Code. And that will require merely the wrapping of the bottom of the sign to eliminate the appearance of two poles. The respondents shall be responsible for providing notice to the Code Enforcement Division of the correction of the nonconformity. I fully expect Mr. Berger to bring the property into compliance based on his representations here this evening. But for any reason, if there's a failure to comply, the Code Enforcement Officer, Mr. Palmer, will be directed to schedule a compliance hearing before me and to give due notice to the respondents. And they would then have an opportunity to appear and present testimony as to whether the violation is continuing, at which time I would make a final determination whether the violation is continuing and to issue fines if I find that the violation does in fact continue. Any fines may become a lien in favor of the city and on any other real or personal property, and any non-homestead real property is subject to foreclosure under the Florida statutes. So the written order that I will issue tomorrow will indicate all that. And Mr. Berger, thank you for appearing this evening and explaining what you're doing to bring the property into compliance. Thank you, sir. The next case I have is case number 2021-090. It alleges violations of Florida Building Code sections 105.1, which requires a permit to be pulled, and also section 110.1, which requires there to be inspections based on those permits. The property owners are listed as Richard Vergovic. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. Martina. Sir, if you would please introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
My name is Chris Robinson, Code Enforcement Officer for the City of Canaveral. This is in reference to 111 Buchanan Avenue in Canaveral. Violation is for work without a permit and structures in the setbacks. The notice violation is sent out on May 14th, 2021. Return receipt received May 17th, 2021 to the property owners. Notice of hearing was sent out October 4th, 2022. Return receipt was October 6th, 2022. This is the property in question. It's just west of Poinsett and east of North Atlantic Avenue. On May 14th, 2021, staff received a complaint that structures had been built along the property line. The site visit revealed two structures along the east side of the back right along the fence line. Both structures were about 10 by 5 by 10 length and height. Another structure was in the southwest portion of the backyard and appears to be a storage shed. This structure is approximately 10 by 10 by 8 length and height. The fourth structure is covered a bar grilling area that is 12 by 12 by 12. This structure has electrical and water to it and is not permitted. All structures are within the setbacks. Staff made contact with the owners and informed them of the violations. They asked to meet the property to discuss how to come into compliance. Staff met with the owners and their contractor and went over the options on how to comply.
Just 1 second on the grilling part. You mentioned electrical. There's no plumbing in that section.
Electrical and plumbing.
And plumbing. Thank you. Okay, you may proceed.
October 14th, 2021, a follow-up site visit revealed nothing has changed. No permits have been applied for. Staff reached out to the owners and asked for status until they were working on it. December 15th, 2021, a contractor Big Kahuna Tiki Huts submitted a permit application to tear down the storage shed, combine the two smaller structures into one, and then move the structure out of the setbacks. However, the larger structure still requires an engineered drawing and a permit for plumbing and electrical. The structures would also need to be moved out of setback. 9/13/2022, staff followed up on the status and found the permit has not been issued. The information provided to the builder is not acceptable. Staff reached out to the builder and left a message at the secretary. Staff never received a call back. 10/4/2022, staff found no change on the issue and generated a notice of hearing. 10/12/2022, the building official advised new information has been submitted on the largest structure, but nothing on the electrical or plumbing, and no information on the two smaller structures.
When you say new info, does that mean a permit application?
Permit application.
And so that was an application on which again?
That application that we received was for the structures being moved out of the setbacks.
Okay, so for
And
the three huts in the setback.
Correct. We still haven't received anything for plumbing or. This is a picture. You can see all four along the pool there. Those are two permanent structures that are within the setbacks. And then the tiki hut in the back, the bar grill area, well within the setbacks. And then to the right, behind the main structure is the storage shed.
So if this was just beach umbrellas at a table, that would be okay, but because this is
These are permanent structures. And I had explained that to them, the difference
Okay.
between temporary and permanent. And we had gone over this, those two structures, to the left there. If they were to be brought down to 7 feet or less and were movable, that would make them a temporary structure and they could remain there. But that's what they would need to do for those structures to stay. The larger structure in the back, would need to be moved. It can be permanent, but it would need to be permitted. It would need to be moved out of the setbacks, but then can't be closer than 10 feet to the main structure.
Okay, so when you say the larger one, we're talking about the
Very
bar,
back in the
the
back.
bar area in the
Yeah.
way
A
back.
storage shed, would need to be torn down because they can't have more than 3 accessory structures on the property.
Okay, so is the storage shed off on the right-hand side, the far right-hand side where the,
That's correct. That's the one right behind the blue building. And my understanding is it's been demolished or it's going to be demolished.
okay. So could they come before you, does the city have a variance board where they could come and seek a variance after the fact to keep these structures in the setback? Is that an option?
I can only enforce the code.
I understand that, but
and
but
That is
is-
not, to my knowledge, I can't answer that question. That would not be a question for me.
Okay.
Brian may be able to answer that question.
Yes, we do have a board. They can apply for a variance. It does take normally take a hardship for the variance, but yes, they can apply for a variance.
Okay. Yeah, how long does that process take if they were to try to seek a variance? And then there's no guarantee, obviously, that a variance would even be granted here, but, how long is that process?
I would have to refer to Ms. Rolfe on that.
Ms. Roth?
Hi, approximately 2 to 4 weeks. And there is a fee, a non-refundable fee of $750. And usually, Mr. Dickey, who is the Director of Community and Economic Development, he likes to have a meeting with the applicant prior to completing the application packet.
All right, so if a variance application is submitted, does it then go to, is there, what is the name of the board that the city has? I assume that considers the variance? With the
I believe it's the Board of Adjustment.
Board of
Yeah,
Adjustment?
It is.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Different municipalities call it different things, so, okay,
Yeah.
Board of Adjustment. Okay, so that's, okay. I just want to understand all the options for the homeowner. And, because frankly, it doesn't look bad. Yeah, I understand it is a technical violation being in the setback. And maybe this really does intrude on on the neighbor. I don't, it's hard for me to say, but, go ahead. I've really digressed from your presentation.
Even if they got the variance, all of these structures were unpermitted. They would all three then require permits because of the size of the other two. Them being permanent structures would need to be permitted.
Right.
And then, the, electrical and plumbing would also need to be permitted.
Right.
Here's another view, facing east. The closer building is the shed. The further building is the tiki bar / grilling area.
Okay.
And I don't know if the property representative.
Sir, would you please come up and introduce yourself for the record?
Hello, I'm Richard Virkovich.
Okay.
I'm the property owner.
Mr. Vigovich, it's pronounced?
Virkovich.
Virkovich?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Virkovich. I'll let you proceed.
Okay, so just to clarify, the shed structure is already down and it is not anymore problem with not anymore there.
Okay,
So to solve that issue and the issue of the three other structures. I hired the company Kahuna Heads and they, I think they submitted like 10 or 14 days ago, they send you the plan. They send the plans over here and employee of the company didn't realize that she was supposed to submit also plans for plumbing and electricity. I have a scheduled meeting with the owner of Kahuna Huts tomorrow morning to go through these issues and to solve it.
okay. And were the plans that were submitted, were they for the electrical and plumbing, or were they for all the structures?
As of right now, there are plans for structures, if I have correct information.
I believe it's for just the main structure. They haven't submitted anything for the two tikis. My understanding was that we're going to turn those into temporary structures.
Okay, so, well, maybe need to go back to that. I thought there were three tiki huts on the left. And then, yeah, that one there. So are those, oh, I see. So that's actually two structures
Yes,
on the
sir.
left, plus the bar. I got it. Okay. And so the idea would be to turn these into temporary structures. And then were the plans that were submitted, were those for did that include the electrical and plumbing?
They did not.
Okay, so that needs to be added then.
Exactly.
Okay. Turning them into temporary structures would certainly solve the technical violation that there is, and that the way I look at it. And then the idea is that if these could be made into temporary structures, then that would solve the issue. Is that right, Mr. Robinson?
It would solve the issue with those two tiki huts on the side of the pool.
Okay. Okay. And so then assuming that electrical and plumbing is submitted for the bar, is there anything else that has to be done to make that bar area conforming?
Well, the bar area, because it's a permanent structure, and it's over 10 by 10, it requires a permit. So the whole structure needs to be permitted, which is what he has submitted. And I spoke to the building official, it's likely going to be approved as submitted, but it needs to be moved out of the setbacks. That is also in the plans that they have submitted.
Okay.
So once it's moved out of the setbacks, and then it's going to be approved as a structure, and then when it gets the plumbing and the electrical permit and inspected, then everything would be in compliance.
Okay. And just so I'm understanding, obviously it's right now in the side setback. The way that we're looking, is that towards the front of the house?
No, that's facing the rear of the house.
That's facing the rear.
I'm standing in the front.
Okay.
I'm in the backyard, but I'm facing from front to back.
We're facing front to back. I got it. And then, so in order to get the bar added a setback, where would that have to be moved to?
He would literally have to move it over to the right about 2 feet and forward about 2 feet.
Okay, and that's doable. It's,
Absolutely.
okay. 2 feet to the right. 2 feet. So just a little bit towards the pool and over to the right. I got it. Right. So, and- right. Anything else you would like to add, Mr. Vidovich?
I think I told you on his meeting to go over tomorrow there, and we're gonna try to cover this next session.
Okay, very good. Ms. Robinson, anything else the city would like to add, and any recommendation you would, it sounds like he's proceeding in good faith to get this corrected. Anything you would like to add? Any
Just based
recommendation?
on the testimony and evidence submitted in this hearing, staff respectfully request the magistrate find the respondents in violation of the notice of violation and give the respondents, I have November 25th, but we won't be here, so I would say January 25th to come in compliance.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and, if there's nothing else to add, let me go ahead and give you an inkling of what I'll put in writing. My findings of fact, conclusions of law and order. I find that the respondents, Mr. Vidovich and Martina Virgo-Vikova, did I pronounce that correctly? Koa, okay. I was close though. All right, that they own the subject property, that notice of violation was properly served on May 14th with a return on May 17th. Notice of hearing was served on October 4th with a return on, I'm sorry, that would have been October 4th with a return on October the 6th. That there were various inspections over time, the latest being on October the 4th, 2022, without any change. That there was a new permit application to change the 3 tiki huts in the setback that was applied for on October 12th, 2022. However, one of the applications does require electrical and plumbing to be added to it. So it's not a complete application yet. I do find that the 3 accessory structures in the form of tiki huts were constructed along the east side of the property line within the 5-foot setback. I find that the largest of the structures, based on the dimensions that were given to me, would exceed the maximum height limit of 10 feet. I also find that the respondent is proceeding in good faith and is going to be working with the contractor. I have the name here, Kahuna someone.
Big Tiki Kahuna.
What was that again? One more time?
Big Tiki Kahuna.
Okay. To bring the nonconformities into compliance with the code. I do find that the notices that were given to the respondents did comply with Section 2253 of the City Code and the Florida statutes. I find that the structures were permanent in nature and required permits in order to construct them, and that. I also find that the storage shed has been removed, and that at least that aspect of this has been brought into compliance. I would say that under Section 105.1 of the Florida Building Code, that you do need to get a permit, including for plumbing and electrical work, and that pursuant to those permits under Section 110.1 of the Florida Building Code, inspections are required. I'm finding violations of section 105.1, 110.1, and 110-468 of the Florida Building Code, incorporated into the city code at section 82-31. And so the order that I'm going to issue is to bring the subject property into full compliance by January 25th, 2023. There was some time to work with the contractor and get this taken care of. That the respondents shall remove the 3 accessory structures within the 5-foot setback along the east property line, and to obtain all required building permits. That the respondents shall be responsible for advising the code enforcement division that the corrections have been made. I will expect that property, based on the representations here tonight, that property will be brought into compliance by that January 25th, 2023 date. If, however, there is a failure to comply by that date, then and Officer Robinson would be directed to schedule a compliance hearing before me, in which the respondents would have an opportunity to appear and present testimony as to whether the violation is continuing, and if it is continuing, that I will issue fines of at least $250 per day for a first violation. Any fines may become a lien in favor of the city, as I indicated at the beginning of the hearing. And sir, I did not ask, is this, do you live at this property? Is this your homestead? It is not, okay, all right. And I would just advise you that in the off chance that this is not remedied, that if it's not homestead, then it's subject to foreclosure. I just put that out there as fair notice, but I do expect you to get this taken care of. And again, I will put all this into a written form, aiming for tomorrow. Anything else before I move on? Okay. The third item I have is case 2022-017. It alleges violations of some of the same codes sections that I just reviewed, section 105.1, pertaining to building permits, and section 110 pertaining to inspections of Florida Building Code as incorporated into the city code. And this pertains to property owned by one Michael Connor. I have 223 Columbia Drive, Unit 224. You may proceed, Mr. Robinson.
Like I said, this is 223 Columbia Avenue, number 224. It's a violation for work without a permit. Notice of violation, April 5th, 2022. Return receipt, April 14th, 2022 to Michael Connor. Notice of hearing, October 4th, 2022. Return receipt, October 7th, 2022 to Michael Connor. This is the property in question, Columbia, right off of Astronaut Boulevard, just to the west of it. February 8th, 2022. During patrol, the city staff observed 2 individuals installing a water heater. Further inspection revealed there was no permit, and neither of the 2 installing the water heater had a contractor's license. Staff informed them of the permit requirement and the need for a licensed contractor to do the work. 2/28/2022, check of the database revealed no permit has been applied for. 3/28/2022, same thing, no change. 4/5/2022, still no permit applied for. The notice of violation was generated and sent to the property owner. 4/15/2022, staff received a call from the property owner indicating he would get the permit for the water heater. 10/3/2022, as of this date, there was still no permit applied for and no further contact with the owner. Notice of hearing was generated and sent to the owner. 10/11/2022, property owner came into City Hall and spoke with staff about coming into compliance. He was informed a permit needs to be obtained by a licensed contractor and all inspections performed to come into compliance. On this same date, a permit was obtained. A final inspection is still needed. 2 days ago, I reached out to the contractor who did the work. And they understand that a final inspection is still required. They're trying to work with property owners to get that taken care of.
You know who the contractor is?
Off the top of my, I think it might be Walker Plumbing, Tom Walker Plumbing. I'm not 100% certain of it right now, but I'm pretty sure it's Tom Walker Plumbing.
Was Tom Walker Plumbing the original installer, or is this?
No, sir. The original car was two individuals, but I don't know if that, I don't remember if that was the homeowner or two friends.
So we have legitimate legitimate licensed contractor coming in to make sure this is done right in the end.
That is correct.
Okay. Anything else before we invite the
No,
property owner?
over to the property owner.
Right. Okay.
And I guess it's not present.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the property owner? On behalf of Mr. Connor? Is Mr. Connor here? I don't see anyone stepping forward to speak for Mr. Connor or Mr. Connor himself. All right. What is the city's recommendation as far as how long is it? Because we have the permit applied for, we have a legitimate licensed contractor involved. What's a reasonable amount of time? for
I'd
them?
like to give them until November 8th, 2022, to come into compliance.
Okay. Very good. Then I'll make some findings of fact. Find that Mr. Connor owns the subject property, had a new water heater installed without the required plumbing permit. That notice of violation was served on April 5th, 2022, and a receipt on April 14. Notice of hearing served on October 4th with return receipt indicating receipt on October 7, 2022. I find that the original work without a permit was observed on February 8th, 2022, and that there were a series of checks by staff, during which time there was no change in the status, that no permit had been applied for. I find that the city's notices complied with Section 2-253 of the city code, as well as the Florida statutes, Chapter 162. As far as notice goes, we find that the city, as conclusion of law, has adopted the Florida Building Code, and that there was a violation of Section 105.1, which requires a permit for plumbing work of this nature, and also Section 110.1, which requires inspections pursuant to those permits that are applied for and issued. And so I find those to be the ordinances that are in violation. I'm going to issue an order that the respondents shall have until November 8th, 2022 to bring the subject property into full compliance with the city code and to obtain all necessary inspections, including a final inspection. And if I didn't say it already, that I do find that a plumbing permit has been applied for by a licensed contractor. And then all the usual notices, which will be in the written order, since Mr. Connor's not here for me to let him know this evening, but everything that everyone sitting here has already heard about if a lien is in fact recorded by the city, if compliance is not achieved by the deadline of November 8th. Let me just get rid of this frog in my throat. We'll go on to the next one. So the next one that I have is case number 2022-054. Richard, Margaret, and Tyler Stark are indicated as the owners. with some different violations here pertaining to business tax receipts, vacation rentals, and parking. Mr. Robinson, I'll let you proceed.
This is 521 Jefferson Avenue, Canaveral, Florida. This is in reference to a vacation rental, parking, and overdensity of the number of units that they're permitted to have. Notice of violation was sent 4/29/2022, return receipt 5/6/2022. Notice of hearing was sent 10/4/2022, return receipt 10/8/2022. This is the property in question, Jefferson Avenue, just west of Ridgewood Avenue, Canaveral. 4/25/2022, staff received a report from Pro Chance. There is a vacation rental at this address not registered with them.
And who is Pro
Chance
Pro
is the
Chance?
company that we have contracted out to monitor all the websites for vacation rental violations in the city.
So it appears that Pro Champs actually monitors this type of activity, and that this is part of their routine services that they advise the city when this code is not
That is correct. They saw this
complied
address
with.
rented out as a vacation rental, and they did not have a registration for it.
Okay. And is Pro Champs that is the entity that handles the registrations for the city? Is that correct?
No.
No?
No, we do all that. It's just registered. Well, yes, and the registration goes through them. And that's the only
Okay.
thing that they would do for us. Everything else would be through the city.
Okay. So they have some kind of incentive, I guess, to find somebody who's not registering with them. I assume they get paid based on their registrations.
I don't know how it works, but I know we pay them.
Okay. All right.
Once they discovered this, they sent a letter notifying the property owner of the requirement, but they still have not registered and they're still renting 4 units. Further inspection on Airbnb revealed the property is listing 4 units for rent, which is more than density permits. Staff generated a notice of violation and sent it to the property owner. On 5/12/2022, staff spoke with the property owner about the notice of violation and explained the property needs to be registered with Pro Chance as a vacation rental, and the property density only allows for 2 units. She was permitted to have a 3rd unit by city administration, but not 4. On 6/6/2022, staff spoke with the owner and was informed Airbnb should now reflect only 3 units for rent, and she's going to register with Pro Chance. 8/17/2022, follow-up revealed the property is still not registered with Pro Chance, and Airbnb shows that units 1 and 2 have been combined into 1 unit, but can be rented separately. The property still has 4 distinct units.
So just back up the last on 8/17. So no registration as of the 17th. And then 1 and 2 are combined but can be rented separately. So that's still a violation of the code.
There's
So
4 units on the property.
if they were rented together, then that would bring it into compliance.
Well, what makes a unit is a kitchen. So there's a complete separate kitchen.
Okay, so I don't understand how they were combined then.
You would have to ask the property owner how they combine the 2.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that.
So the issue here is that if 1 and 2 are going to be combined, you can only have 1 kitchen.
That is correct.
Okay. So they have to remove a kitchen then. Okay, I got it. Proceed.
On 10/11/2022, a follow-up revealed no change from the August follow-up. On 10/20/2022, staff received a call from the property owner who stated she doesn't feel she should have to give up the 4th unit because she purchased the property that way. Staff informed her the property only had 3 units when she purchased it. Staff informed her that she converted a shed into a living unit after she purchased it, bringing the property to 4 units. She said this wasn't a fact and it was always 4 units. A check of the taxing history and permit history of the property shows that the property was built in 1964 as a single-family home, only had 1 unit. In 1980, a second-story, complete separate unit was permitted and built, bringing the property to 2 units. Sometime prior to 2014, a third unit was added without permits in violation of the density code. That third unit was separating the original single-family unit into 2 units. And then the upstairs that was permitted was now 3 units.
I'm not sure I followed that. Hold on a second. So in 2014, third unit is built.
No. Sometime prior to
Oh, before.
2014,
Before 2014,
a third unit was built.
without a permit.
Without a permit and no knowledge of the city. A single-family residence, the original single-family residence, a single-story residence, was cut in half somehow, some way, and turned into 2 separate living rooms.
And so now we're up to 3 units.
And now we're up to 3 units.
Okay. And just because property changes hands, if the property is non-conforming, that doesn't excuse the non-conformity,
Well,
right?
it wasn't a nonconformity because the city never approved it to be a nonconformity. It should have only
Correct.
had 2 units.
Correct.
If
But
it was
my,
never permitted, we would have never approved it to be permitted for 3 units.
right, my point is that if you buy property that is in violation of the code, you're not excused. Is that right? You're basically buying the violation.
If you buy a non-conformity and you're operating it the same way, it can stay that way. Okay, so unless I believe if they put more than 51% of the value of the property into that property, then it has to
Okay.
meet current code.
Okay.
But at the time that they purchased it, according to the city, this was only 2-unit structure.
And yes, you are correct, sir. If you buy a property that has a violation on it, you purchase the violation along with it.
Right, okay. And when I could, if they're here to testify, but I could ask them, but do you know when the current owners purchased the property?
2017.
All right. And do we know how it went from 3 units to 4 units, when that happened?
I'm getting ready to get to that.
Okay, all right,
This unit was created in the original single-family unit, as I discussed, into the 2 distinct units. The 2016 taxing history showed that the property paid taxes on a triplex. In 2017, the Starks purchased the property, and staff conducted a site visit for a complaint separate from this issue.
Okay.
While on site, staff observed the shed that is now a full residence and saw that it was just a shed. It had cabinets in it, it had a sink in it along the back, but in appearance, it was just a storage shed, maybe a tool shed or, some sort of shed utilized to work on projects or something. But
okay,
it was not a residence. The 2017 tax history showed the Starks paid taxes on a triplex. Since that time, the shed was converted to its current state, and in 2018, the Starks paid taxes on a 3 to 4 units, not attached, according to the Brevard County Property Use Code. Based on the tax history and what staff observed in 2017 visit, the property was never a 4-unit property until the Starks turned it into one in 2018.
okay.
The property owners are here.
And we're talking about the payment of taxes, so if you could explain a little bit about the business taxes that the city requires when you're running a business of this nature.
Well, they're running it as a vacation rental.
Mhm.
And they have the business tax receipts, so they're good on that now. They've got that taken care of. So the only violations that we're discussing is the density issue, and then if they're having the 4 units, there's a parking issue, because they can only accommodate 3 at this time. And then registering with approaching, which is separate from a BTR.
Okay. All right. Is anyone from the property owner here to address these issues? Ma'am, if you'd come up and please introduce yourself for the record. Could you state your name and address, please? Okay.
Excuse me, Ms. Stark, would you please talk into the microphone?
Yes, if you could just move the microphone a little closer to your mouth so everyone back there can hear and you're on the record.
So
Thank you.
our property is at 521 Jefferson.
And where do you reside?
And from South Chicago.
Okay, so I have an address in Frankfort, Illinois.
Yes,
Okay. You came down from Illinois for this?
yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
I had like 3 days notice. He did have it sent certified, but with COVID, our mailing service, doesn't send certified, and they're getting with my regular mail. And I never check my mailbox. So I check my mailbox, and then I see there's all them right away. And I debated, did I come or don't I come, but it's very important to me.
Mhm.
And if you don't mind, I did write something out. so
Sure.
I don't forget.
Sure.
So, family already in the area and vacationing yearly for 4 years in the Cape Canaveral area. We purchased our retirement townhouse in 2014. On one of our annual trips, as we got closer to retirement, we were looking for potential property investment in the area. Spring of 2017, I found 2 properties in the area that stood out. The property on Jefferson was a 1960s beach house that was a triplex with back apartment, so 4 units. We reviewed another property a block away on Adams that also had multiple units. I called the Cape Canaveral Building Department to inquire about more information on the 2 potential properties. I spoke extensively with Dave Dickey, and he was very helpful. He informed me the difference between the 2 properties was that Jefferson had permits and the other property did not, and therefore could not be sold as a multi-unit. This was the deciding factor for us purchasing the property in Jefferson. Due to Dave's comment that the other property cannot be sold as a multi-unit and the Jefferson property could, this then implied that this was a conforming property, since he knew it was a multi-unit and could be sold as a multi. We bought the property Labor Day weekend, and I think it was a week later, we were hit by Hurricane Irma. I was in Chicago when this hit. My kids were here, a couple of my kids. After the hurricane, our family members in the area did a quick review of the damage and thought the damage was minor. Upon our arrival, a few weeks later, that we found the damage was much more extensive and required major demolition and reconstruction. During this work, many people came and went, from insurance adjusters to inspectors, to code enforcement, to FEMA, to tax assessors. We were there 9 months doing the repairs that I thought I was going to be there for 2 weeks to do. I left home, and my husband was home earning the paycheck. I was here doing the work, general contracting, the work, overseeing, not general contract, overseeing the work that we done. And Chris was one of the gentlemen who stopped by to check the damage. During his inspection, he commented the back apartment, which he's saying was a shed, could never be an apartment again and must be converted to a shed. I didn't agree with the assessment and went back again to this. I didn't agree because I said that made a big difference. We bought the property. They said there were 4 units. I did not agree with the assessment. I went back and talked to Dave Dickey and reminded him of our earlier conversations and his comments that there were permits on file. Dave said he recalled our conversation, and he said he would see what he could do to get back and get back to me. I contacted my realtor to help her clarify that back building was in addition to the triplex that we bought. And he went back and forth with Dave while I was attending to all the repairs. It was overload. Me, I was there. It was very overwhelming. There wasn't people to help us. We were there by ourselves, not expecting to be there that long. A few weeks later, I was provided by Dave a list of what was required to bring the building back to city satisfaction, and I agreed to comply to everything on the list and was told I can move forward with repairs to return the property to the status prior to the hurricane. We pulled all necessary permits to rebuild the property to pre-hurricane status. We had multiple visits and inspections during the nearly year-long repair remodel process. The repair remodel process consisted of no floor plan changes. We did not make any changes. We just repaired what was there. Only upgrading of materials and workmanship. These repairs required complete window and door replacements with hurricane window and door upgrades, roofing repair replacement, plumbing and electric repairs, all following the checklist provided by Dave Dickey. After these repairs were completed and signed off by the city, we went back to renting the property as a 4-unit per our original plan and expectation as we purchased this as a conforming multi-unit property. Fast forward, this is 4 years ago. Approximately 6 months later, we received a letter signed by Dave Dickey stating we only had 3 units along with a list of code violations. That was the April letter that they referred to. As you might imagine, I was shocked to receive this as I had followed Dave's request and we had incurred expensive costs to repair the property to its current status. Initially, I was concerned that there may be confusion again about the back apartment, but Dave informed me that he was talking about the lower level of the main house. I was shocked because I never realized there was an issue with the main triplex. I informed him that we made no floor plan changes and that the property was a 4-unit all along, going back to our original conversation prior to purchase, prior to repair remodel, and that it was he who provided me direction on what was required during our repair remodel process. So how could we be in violation? He said the letter would be thrown out if we agreed to scale down to 3 units and enroll in the ProChamp software. We would then be in conformance. We purchased a 4-unit property, a triplex with an unattached apartment, so that was 4 units. And we received numerous confirmations from Dave prior to purchase, prior to remodel repair, that implied this was a conforming property and had done our entire remodel to maintain that status. If this is going to only be allowed to be a 3-unit, that would have been the time for them to tell us before we had, the time for the change discussion was prior to providing us with a list of repair remodel requirements that we follow to the letter. So it would have been that time that they could have told us that, no, you can't have this as an apartment back there. And it's an open, there's a doorway between the two on the bottom. So it's completely closed off or open. So you can, I'll just keep reading so I don't say things twice.
Okay.
Upon further digging myself, I find many missing permits or lost permits and several permits with errors. I have a permit that was issued in 2016 when we hadn't even been attached to the property that has our name on it. So there was a permit that was in 2016. We weren't even near the property, but it has our name on it. There is a permit when we were doing work. And looking through the permits, there really weren't that many permits from the previous owner who owned it, one owner from 1960. So there was
So you bought the property from the original owner?
yes, we did.
Okay.
And the permits just were, like I said, many missing, some were lost, and several with errors. There was another one that when we did work on it, so now 2018, it had the previous owner's name on that permit. That one possibly, but the other one, they wouldn't even have our name in 2016. We weren't even associated with that property. I have copies of those. It seems as though most of the permits the city has are based upon the work that we perform. So they did all these changes in there. We buy the house, hit by the hurricane, and most of the permits after that were our permits that we did.
So I think I'm sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt you. Are you done?
No,
Please go ahead, and I'll ask some questions when you're done. Take your time. You're doing fine, by the way.
My apologies for the delayed response from the first violation notice because I took very seriously everything with this. It's something that my husband wanted to sell right away when we had the hurricane because I'm up here and he's up there. We were just in a spot where we had to do the repairs. We had such extensive damage and we would have lost everything we had. So I was very much in touch with the city. I could go into Home Depot and they know me by name because I was there every day. We had just us doing work. There was nobody hired to do work. And so in April, in the end of April, we got the letter and we had a terrible family loss that was extremely difficult for us within the next few months. We've spent much time in Canaveral, and we're not well versed with the code requirements. And therefore, we relied extensively on the direction of the city planners and professionals to answer our questions and provide direction when needed. My research online showed pictures of the previous owner's house. If I type in my address, it doesn't show any of our pictures. It shows all of the previous owner's addresses, 4 apartments. 4 kitchens, 4 apartments. We didn't add anything. We didn't do anything to the structure of the floor plan. We did it exactly the same. We just had to replace all the windows, replace the roof, replace, floors and damage stuff. We tried to keep as much as we could, but there were things we had to replace. I have pictures of all the 4 kitchens that were online. So he was saying it was a shed. It was an apartment. We walked through it. It looked like a shed by the time he saw it after the hurricane hit it, because the hurricane really hit that. And they said, okay, if you do this and this and this, we'll work with you and we'll let you have that. We'll let you have that building. So we did everything he said. At great expense, we had to hire an engineer to do the drawing. We had to hire Canaveral construction company helped us, and people just came together and helped us. They knew the spot we were in. And so then I received a second letter, like I said, about approximately 10 days ago, because I didn't get a check in the mail, and the certified letter wasn't delivered to me as it should. It was just treated like regular mail. And it was with demands to comply or go before the magistrate. So I basically had 3 days to come, and try and get it together. So I apologize. I tried to do as much copying and research as I could at the library on my email, because that's where most of the information was there. And talking to Chris, as Chris was one who sent the letter, he again stated that we only have 3 units and have to register with ProCamp software. And the reason why I hadn't registered with ProCamp is because you have to state how many units you have.
Mhm.
So I had talked to Dave prior to talking to Chris, and Dave said, well, put that you have 4 units, and if they don't let you have it when you go to court, then ProChamps will give you the money back. And then when I was talking to Chris said, no, you can't do that. You can't put that it's 4 units. You have to go, it's a 3-unit property. And then I told him what Dave said, and he said, as I also called Dave and pleaded with our past conversations, and Dave said that Chris was the only one that could change things. Then when I talked to Chris said Dave is the only one that can, because Chris said, I've told you as much as I could tell you. You'd have to go to my boss to get, I can't do anymore. This is all I can do for you. And so I said, who's your boss? And he said, well, it's Dave. And I said, well, Dave just told me you're the one that makes the decision. And he goes, well, Dave's in the office. Let me go check with Dave. So he went, I guess it sounded like he walked down the hall and said, I have Margie Stark on the line. He said, he told him, what the conversation was. And Dave just said, just say no change to be made. He said through Chris, just say no change to be made. So my current situation is that because I relied on the information provided by the county personnel, I potentially have purchased a non-conforming use property and then remodeled, repaired the property to maintain its non-conforming
use based upon instruction from county personnel at great cost. So I am appealing to the magistrate, grandfather this property for 4-unit property from my original purchase. The tax form, the tax from the people prior to that says triplex from 2010 on. That's the farthest I could see when I went online. For all those years, it said triplex. And then when we bought it, the tax assessors had come through and he wrote triplex, he put 3 or 4 unattached. And I asked why you put unattached when most of it's attached, and he said, you have to choose unattached or attached. And because one of them is unattached, that's why we did it that way. But he said, I have nothing to do with code. He said, that's just what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm writing. Along with him seeing that was our inspector early on. We had the inspector prior to buying it. He knows that there was 4 apartments. So I have that inspection that he knows that there was 4 apartments. So anywhere along the line, we never knew that there weren't 4 apartments. We never knew. Now I would ask those questions, but at that time, we were just looking for a place to have some investment so we can come see our 2 kids that want to move back home. That live here.
Right.
So I'm getting to the end.
Take your time.
When the permit is coded as a 3 to 4 unit and mentioned as a triplex, I am considering the main building as a triplex and the back unattached unit, bringing it to the 4 unit. This was a layout from the time I purchased. Why during all the permit and inspections was this not mentioned as an issue? If at that time it was brought to my attention that there was a nonconformance issue, I could have resolved the situation at that time, either through approval of what work was required to achieve conformance for a 4-unit, or I would have substantially changed the layout during the repair remodel phase. Because now, if they're telling me to take out a kitchen, I have countertops and everything made. Everything's measured and done for it to be a kitchen. It was a separate apartment. So now I will have to take the stove. Where am I going to put it? It's a beautiful stove. Take the stove out, but he said I could keep everything else in there, the dishwasher, the refrigerator, but it's just going to have a hole in the wall from where the stove is. And when I contacted the building department prior to purchase, I was told it had permits. And all I saw on the sign when I saw the place, it said multi-unit. The realtor that helped me during this was not aware of anything with the building. She's just reading what she sees on paper. So in going back in some of my emails, which I did extensive research since I got here, I was in the library all day Monday. I see that there were emails that I had contacted her to see if she can talk to them about the back building, her noticing that was an apartment. And so that was what she was, I guess she was, that was what she was looking to do. And she copied me on those emails, but in the construction and all the craziness, I never even got onto my computer. So I never saw those sites. Just going through things right now, Monday. It's the first time I saw those. And she lays out the triplex as being the bottom floor, the top floor, and the back building. But that's not how we saw it. We saw it as the triplex being the 3 because there were 3 apartments there. There was nothing that we added. There's 3 apartments there, and then back.
And so let me just make sure I'm understanding that this is your realtor advising you before you purchase the property, but it was
afterwards when Chris was the gentleman who came by, and I think he was telling me to go by. I don't know what his reason was for coming by, maybe just checking things, because he was just like looking at everything and walking around, and they were free to walk around wherever. And then he came by and he goes, this is going to be a shed. And I said, no, I just purchased that. I checked if there were permits, and he said there were. And he said, no, this is going to be a shed. But then I went and talked to Dave, and Dave gave me a list of things. So I got to answer your question.
so I'm just trying to understand who
So my
told
realtor-
you it was only a
My
triplex.
realtor basically did not even know the property. I found the property, and then he kind of stood out to let me in, walk around. It was very confusing. because it was three apartments, you know, it didn't, it was the way that we walked around, it was like a maze. So she kind of just stood there and let me walk around. She wasn't showing me anything because she didn't know what to show me either, but everything was all furnished. Everything was, had the furniture there and everything. It wasn't like if it was non-conforming that the stove was out and I put a stove there. There was a stove there. As in the pictures, if I could look online, there was a stove in all four units. There was a full kitchen in all four units, full bathrooms in all four units. I only got just a few lines left.
Right.
Why is it now my fault that the city doesn't have records of what was done to convert to a multi-unit back in the 90s? And I have to face the burden of further construction costs to conform when all this should have been addressed at the time of my last permit. How can I be assured that something else doesn't come at me? Because I thought everything was done when we did the back building. I was shocked when the letter came. And I did not create the hardship.
But let me just understand something. The back building, after the hurricane damage, that was not habitable at that point. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
It absolutely was not.
Was
That's
the,
when. Chris,
okay.
you
And
saw,
so,
and it looked like maybe a shed, but it was, I have pictures of it. It was an apartment. And I have a statement from somebody, from the previous owner, realtor. She had sent, was ever anybody living in there? And she put, that somebody lived in there 10 years ago, and they rented it out 10 years ago, but they just let family members stay there. You know, but they weren't renting it out, but people were living there. My electrician, who became my electrician, he worked on the house 10 years prior, and he knows that house very well. He said it always was full apartments. And he also remembers people living in each of them at different times. He worked on it for 10 years before me. And there was missing permits from jobs he did. And like I said, one of the jobs he did has a permit with my name on it, but it was in 2016. We weren't even looking at the house. We didn't buy the house until the end of the year in 2017. Yeah. That's it. I'm just asking to please keep it the way it is. I don't want to have to restructure a whole kitchen. I would have done it in the very beginning if that was told to me. But I had no idea that wasn't, you know, I mean, things happened through the years that don't happen today. Things happened in 1960 and in the older times that don't happen today. People did stuff and then people overlooked it and they allowed it. But everything in that back was with a permit. So if they're calling it a triplex prior to them using the back, then that would mean the triplex is inside of the home. And also the way the tax assessor said, when they put triplex on there, when it stands alone by itself, it means it's all in one building. When they put unattached, that means that there's a building unattached.
I understand.
So I have copies of everything. I have copies of pictures of the kitchen.
Okay. And let me, I'm happy to take as exhibits, any documentary evidence you would like to submit.
The only thing I don't,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you on that.
the only thing I don't have are the permits that were all issued to the previous owner. I
What-
tried to copy those today
okay.
and the library closed.
Well, here's what I'm thinking, and I'll wait for the city to. Here's what I'm thinking, and I want to give you an opportunity to respond, Mr. Robinson, but this actually creates some complex legal issues that I don't think I'm in a position to make a final determination tonight. In addition to the fact that the respondent here, Ms. Stark, ran out of time to get certain evidence that she would like to submit. What I'm thinking,
Am I responding?
you are the respondent. Yes, you are. I'm sorry. I used a technical term. You're
Okay.
responding to the city's complaint. So,
And I didn't get what?
and so there are certain items that you said you ran out of time to get me
Those
to,
are just things that the city has as far as the permits the previous owner, of the previous
So-
owner. The city is the one who sent it.
So what I'm thinking is I give the city and I give you, Ms. Stark, 10 days to submit whatever evidence you would like me to consider. You could, I'll take whatever evidence you want to give me tonight. And then if there's anything in addition that you would like me to consider, that there'd be 10 days to submit it to me by
I can
email.
get to you tomorrow. I'm planning on leaving next Wednesday. I can, so long, put this in you too, but we have a big project going on at home, and it was already hard to come as well, but, this is our livelihood too.
I understand.
and So,
How much time after tonight would you like to submit any additional
I could've had
evidence?
it- I could have, the city has it. It was just, it's through an email from Dave. I could have had it today, but the library times out at 5 o'clock and, so one day,
Okay, I'll tell you what, today is Tuesday. I'll give until the end of the week to provide me with whatever additional documentation you would like me to consider. And the same goes with the city. Anything you'd like me to consider. And if you would, do you have something to write down my email address?
We can give that to her.
Okay.
We can give that.
That would be fine. And that way, and I'll make sure anything that I get from either of you will go to the other. And so any additional documents, any additional argument, you know, well,
but I just.
well, you do have a case that you're arguing to me. And so if there's any other points that you want me to consider, I call that argument. And so, again, I would just give everyone till the end of the week, anything that you want to supplement, anything you want me to consider. So tonight, it looks like you do have some documents that you'd like me to consider. And do you have an extra copy for me, or are those your own copies? Okay. And I'll identify these documents when Ms. Stark is ready to give me whatever she wants me to have. Sure, please take your time. While she's, well, I don't want to have her distracted, so why don't we just give her a couple minutes here to pull together. Okay. All right. So just for the record, I have a timeline presented by Ms. Stark, as well as looks like a printout from the Brevard County Property Appraiser's Office, noting 3 or 4 living units, none attached. And it has the, anyway, I'm going to let you speak into the microphone if you would.
There were drawings, but there were times it was called a single family. So it was just very confusing if you do look back at everything. And I will know to look at all this stuff in the future, but I guess I just relied on the people I talked to. I talked to Dave prior to buying it, and he told me that there were permits, so I didn't That's why we bought this property and not the one 2 blocks away.
All right, and then also in this packet of information are photographs
Of the
of
kitchens.
of kitchens. I see 2, 3, I see 4.
Google my address, there's 40 pictures from the previous owner, which shows,
Then if anything you want me to consider, I'm going to ask you to email it to me by Friday. So
Okay.
anything else?
okay,
And then there's a building permit in this packet of information dated November 17 of 2017. Actually, a number of different building permits.
most of them are to us.
Here, could you speak up a little bit?
Most of the building permits were ours, that,
Okay.
from this property, from the remodel.
All right. And I see some plans for windows. I see again, these are mainly building permits with different expiration dates. I see a roofing permit.
My electrician who knows the building well, for him to say that he saw something in writing from him, is that something that would be
Yes,
helpful?
yes. If you have if you could present a letter from him or anything in writing, even an email from him, uh, giving his recollections of the property, that would be helpful. Submitted permit. Okay. Well, it looks like these are all permits all the way to the end. Is that correct?
That is the inspection.
Please
That's the
speak in-
inspection, when the inspection shows that there's 4 units in there.
Okay.
Um,
And who was the inspector? Was this your private inspector
I
before you
know that it
purchased?
had prior, yeah. So it's just what appeared to anybody who walked through. You saw, it was furnished, you saw the 4 apartments. So,
And was there a Realtor's listing that indicated whether there were 3 or 4 units when at the time you
there
purchased it?
seems that there was, but when I came there,
Please
was
speak
just-
into the microphone.
when I found the property, I was just riding my bike in the area. I was there visiting my kids, and I really liked it. I called my daughter, and she said she had a friend who's a realtor, she could let me in. She could probably let you in and look at it.
But
So
the question is,
there was a,
would-
it said multi-unit on
Okay.
on the outside of
so
the
the,
sign.
so the list, well, not only the sign, but there's a listing that Realtors do it's on the internet. You know, did that listing indicate whether there were 3 or 4 units?
It said triplex.
Okay,
But then when we got there, they're like, this is a bonus building. And then the city
Okay.
did permit that back building after. So the triplex would be the main building, and the city permitted the back building.
okay.
But we thought it was permitted all along, because I had called Dave, and he said that there were permits on that property.
All right, well, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to hand these documents to the secretary with a request that they be scanned and emailed to me in color. And I will I'm going to call this Respondents Composite Exhibit 1. Also going to ask if I can have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation from the city. That will be the city's Exhibit 1. And then any additional documents that are given to me this week, then I'll number them accordingly. So at this point, I'm gonna let Mr. Robinson respond on behalf of the city.
There's a lot.
There is.
There's a lot of hearsay testimony going on here that we can't corroborate. On our side, Mr. Dickey's name was dropped quite a bit. I think it would be only fair to him that he be present to be able to speak on his behalf.
Okay.
on
Okay,
things.
well, on that, and so there was a request to present evidence from the electrician. And so why don't I also, if by the end of the week, if you would like to submit an affidavit or any kind of information from Mr. Dickey, I can
Well,
take
what
that
we're
under.
suggesting
Okay.
is because there's so much that's been talked about here and said, and there's all these third parties that have said things, the property appraiser site, which we don't have anything to do with. They can
Correct.
say whatever they want, and they do throughout the city.
Correct.
We have no knowledge of what a property is doing prior to us conducting an inspection.
Correct.
There's probably thousands of non-conforming violations in this city that are currently operating, and they shouldn't be operating that way. So with all of these different names that have been spoken about, and they said this and they said that, we think it only fair that we table this for now and we revisit it with all the new information and all the parties be present in January. And let's revisit this case then, because there's so much information and there's so many other people that probably should be here to be able to contradict or confirm some things that have been said. So
Well-
that's what the city is asking for at this time.
Yeah.
We would like to reevaluate all of this information that's now been said.
Right.
Probably go and speak with the realtor who sold
I
the
would-
property.
Let me make another point. And when I said there are complex legal issues involved in this, I'm going to suggest that the city speak with the city attorney,
We have,
Mr. Garganese,
we have.
because there is a principle called estoppel. And so Ms. Stark was talking about their reliance on representations made by the city. Now, estoppel is more limited when it comes to municipality. Reliance on an error of law by a city official does not provide for an estoppel. However, this is something that I think I would want some argument on, and I was thinking I was going to have to research this, but I'm inclined to agree with the city at this point that we ought to table this, and that we need, and then the Starks, they may want to have their own attorney look at this as well, and especially this estoppel issue.
Just real quick, sir. Yes, the city would like to table this. We'll bring it back in January along with the city attorney and Mr. Dickey, so we can get testimony from him on the record for that. I would just like to suggest to Mrs. Stark, as soon as she has a minute.
Sure.
Ms. Stark, I would like to suggest to you that you go on to ProChamp's website and you do register the 3 units. Doesn't mean that's all you're going to have. You can always add a 4th unit later if it's approved. The reason why I say that is because right now you're incurring late fees, and they could build all the way through January. You are authorized 3 units on that property to rent. So I would suggest that you go ahead and go on ProChamps and go ahead and register your 3 units and pay, because if you don't, it'll keep occurring, and I don't want that to happen.
Would you like to come to the microphone and we get all this on the record and everyone can hear?
As soon as I got the first violation, and I talked to Brian and Chris, I believe, at that time, and maybe, not Brian, Dave. I talked to Dave after that.
Mhm.
I did instruct my property manager who takes care of the property. I did instruct her that it's only 3 apartments, and we did not split them up. We never split them up during that time. I told her we cannot split these apartments up. I really did what I could do to comply.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And do you agree with the city's request that we table this matter until January? That will give you a full and fair opportunity to, again, present any additional information you would like. The electrician could come here and give his testimony or any kind of,
The electrician is here if you want to hear him today, too.
he's here, he could testify and,
Yes,
okay, well, why don't we do that? Let's take his testimony now. That way he wouldn't have to come back
okay.
in January. But let me, while he's coming up, do you agree with the request to table the matter till January. Will not get determined before then.
From Chicago, I did try to find an attorney the first time. The April, when I got the April thing, I tried reaching out to somebody who would help me, but nobody wants to help me with something so
Okay,
difficult.
well-
It's so much work, I don't even know, you know.
Okay, the question is, do you agree with the request to table the matter and come back in January to finish it up? You're okay with that? Okay. All right, and go ahead, Officer
Before
Robbins.
he speaks,
Yes.
I would just like to say, I wish we could table it now, because we're talking 3 months later.
Yeah.
Before we can object to anything he may say, you know, and he may be saying other names, and they're not going to defend themselves. So we came here with our evidence to support, and now new information is being brought up, and other people's names are being brought in. We just would like to just table this for now,
Okay.
and he can do a written statement maybe,
Okay.
or.
If that's a motion to table, I'm going to deny it right
Okay,
now because
okay.
I want to hear from the electrician.
Okay.
And I'm taking notes. I'm going to remember everything that was said this evening. And just because we're taking a few-month break, I'm not going to forget any of this. I have the memory of an elephant, I promise you. And, but I don't want to inconvenience the electrician for a second time since he's a citizen, he's come here. Let's give him a chance to give us his information tonight. And sir, if you could just introduce yourself and speak into the microphone and let us know who you are and what your address is.
Yes, sir, my name is Bob Hogue. I'm the owner and operator of Hogue Electric here in Cape Canaveral for 62 years.
And how do you spell Hogue? H-O?
H-O-O-G.
H-O-O-G. Okay. All right, Mr. Hogue.
I have not known Mrs. Stark until just back in maybe the latter part of 2017. I did know Mr. Johnson, who the previous owner was. I did many things for Mr. Johnson. I did not do the fourth unit. The fourth unit I did do. The third unit, which is in contestant, I had no knowledge of who did that.
And if I could just interrupt you, when you say the fourth unit, are you talking about the shed?
The outside structure, yes.
Okay, so you did do the electricity there.
Yes.
And when did you do that electricity?
It was right, I don't remember whatever, after that hurricane, we had Aaron. The structure I know was habitable before that. I've been to that property many times just for small incidental repairs for Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
I did do a permitted job inside of the front unit. We did some work in there. We put in a new electrical service panel, made some corrections that were in error because of an inspection.
And I'm sorry to interrupt your train of
That's all right.
thought here, but just going back to that fourth unit, the shed, which seems to be important to this case. You said that was when you said after Aaron, was that a name of a hurricane?
Then the hurricane, yes, sir.
And do you know the
I
approximate
think it
year
was
of that?
2018 or something like that.
So did you do the electrical work in the fourth unit in the shed before or after the Starks purchased it?
After,
After, okay,
yes, sir. Ms. Park owned it at that time.
okay.
I think she owned it only for a week or 2 weeks, and it had a hurricane and destroyed the building.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge of the electrical, of that kitchen being there before the Starks purchased it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for how long was the kitchen in the shed unit?
That I can't really answer. I know the shed was livable for many years because their son lived in that.
Okay.
He resided in that, and he was always basically around the place when I'd go there, and he was outside on the patio sitting in front of the shed playing his guitar. So I know he lived in there.
Do you remember Mr. Johnson's son's name?
No, I wouldn't, yeah, I can't.
Okay, that's fine. And do you remember Mr. Johnson's first name?
Robert, I believe it was.
Robert Johnson?
I think it was the same name.
All right, I'll let you continue.
Towards the end, Mr. Johnson was kind of getting bedridden type thing. Yeah. But when I was in there, we changed the service panel up in the front unit, which I would call unit number one. And at another given time, we went upstairs and we changed the main breaker out in the upstairs panel. That was another time I was in there. That was before Mrs. Stark owned it. And I was in there several times just for minor repairs. I personally did a lot myself.
Okay.
And when we went there to, when Mrs. Stark purchased the unit, they had an inspection done and we had to go move the weatherhead on the service away from a window that was in non-compliance to the codes.
Okay.
Which I did that. We got a permit for all that.
Could you explain that? I'm sorry, it was during the inspection when purchased, you looked at the electrical components, and then what had to be changed now?
It was the service riser where the power company, Florida Power attaches to your home.
Oh, okay,
It
so
was
it's called a
within
service.
3 feet of a window and it had to be moved.
So is that kind of, you called it a service rider? Is that like a pole that sticks
Yes,
up at the outside line attaches to?
Yes, sir. That's a service riser.
Service rider, I never knew that term. Okay,
So she permitted that, permitted everything I did with her, we permitted. The building outside, the panel inside, the weatherhead. The only thing that I'd done when Mrs. Stark actually physically owned the property was I moved the weatherhead.
okay,
Other stuff was permitted under Mr. Johnson.
all right. And so we know that Mr. Johnson's son was living in the outside shed. Did you ever have occasion to go into the shed?
Yes, sir.
And when Mr. Johnson owned it?
Yes, sir.
And was there a kitchen in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. With
So-
a full living quarters, 1 bedroom, kitchen, and just kind of like a bathroom and front area with that.
Okay, and so how far back can we place that kitchen? Going back 10 years or longer, or are you, just asking for the best of your recollection?
From now,
Uh,
I'd say 15 years.
15 years ago, so that kitchen has been there. And then as far as, based on your experience in the property, were there always 4 units with 4 kitchens?
Anything else, I'll always like to.
Okay. All right,
I had the occasion when I did do Mr. German was the inspector that came up and inspected the interior with me of the service panel change that we did.
Uh-huh.
And we even commented on the kitchen, how nice, whoever did the kitchen did a nice job on it.
okay, and who was that again?
I say whoever remodeled the kitchen did a nice job, other than some of the hidden electrical we found later on. This is, I can't remember, Stark. I
Okay.
want to say Stewart.
That's okay.
Mr. Stark kitchen had a few ghosts in it that we corrected.
Okay, electrical ghosts?
I'm sorry?
When you say ghosts, you mean electrical type
Hidden
issues?
items that were, tucked
Okay.
behind
So-
it, you know,
And so who made the comment that whoever did the remodeling did a nice job? Was that someone from the city who said that?
I did.
Oh, you said it.
I myself, I look
Okay.
at people.
Okay.
Nice kitchen.
Okay.
But that wasn't the kitchen that was in question, it was the kitchen back.
Okay.
All I know is my years of doing business with Mr. Johnson, there was 4 units there. as far as I-
Okay. All right.
And I also know why. I know.
Okay. Anything else
So,
to add? Thank you for your testimony. All right. And I am going to, at this point, I'm going to table the matter until January, for the January hearing. And in the meantime, I'm sure you'll be speaking with Mr. Garganese, and we will, instead of me placing a deadline to submit additional documents by the end of the week, because it's now tabled, it's removed from the table, that any additional documentary evidence can be presented to me in January. Any additional witnesses, documentary evidence, any of that can be presented in January. We'll go from here. And Ms. Stark, do you want to, again, come to the microphone so we could hear what your question is?
Evidence about the property that was on before us that the other people had. If I send you a link on Zillow, it's much easier because there's 20 pages. You can just see it much easier that way than if I try to copy it out. It doesn't even, it shows walking through and Can I just still send that to you as a link that
You,
way?
uh, I'm gonna, ask, because websites can change over time. And out of an abundance of caution, I would ask that you, actually print out in color, whatever it is you want me to look at. And just have that emailed to me, and I'll make sure it gets emailed to the city as well. But when you just have a link and then something changes on it, and then people are not looking at the same
So I
same
can
evidence.
go ahead and email it. That's much easier to email it to you than it is to try and print them all out.
What I'm going to suggest is that you print these things, I'm going to suggest that you print these things out and you present them to me in January. So I would say, have a copy, to me, and,
I can email a copy to you, that's what you're saying?
no, actually, it's not, actually, what I'm saying, instead of emailing me documents, instead of doing that, I'm going to say, present your documentary evidence to me in January. Just, we'll all come back in the room and just give me copies of whatever there is. And I'll make sure, Ms. Roth will make sure a copy is given to the city at that point. Or if you want to even, make an extra copy for the city, if you give them the courtesy, that'd be appreciated as well. So let's do that. I don't want to do links that could change. All right. Anything else before we move on? Okay, so the matter of Starks is hereby tabled, and we'll reconvene in January at the January hearing, and we'll continue. Ma'am, I can't.
The
January
25th.
You'll also receive a letter on that.
Okay. So. All right. The next thing, and the last matter on the agenda is and I mentioned a Massey hearing earlier, and a Massey hearing is a hearing where I determine whether a property continues to be in violation, and I issue a fine. And that's named after a case called Massey, but it's case number 2019-340. The property owner is indicated as Michael Notary. Property address I have is 7090 North Atlantic Avenue, and there's an alleged violation of section 94-121D as in David. Palmer, you can proceed.
Sir, the address is 7090 North Atlantic Avenue, legal and partial ID are on the board. Violation is for non-conforming sign. Findings of facts, conclusions of law and order was mailed on 3/3/2020 with a return receipt of 3/9/2020 to Michael Notary.
I'm sorry, and the return date was what?
3/9/2020.
3/9/2020.
Notice of hearing, the notice was sent out on 10/14/2022 with a return receipt of 10/17/2022 to Michael Notary.
Is there, do you have slides on this, or this is just, or am I supposed to be having slides in front of me or not?
Not,
I do not have slides in front of me.
I don't have it either.
There we go. Thank you so much. So those were, the findings of fact, conclusions of law and order on March 3rd, 2020, with the return on 9th of 2020. The notice of hearing 10/14 with a return on 10/17/2022.
yes, sir.
Okay,
This is the property in question?
I remember it.
Okay, February 25th of 2020, this case was presented to you, and you found the property owner in violation. You gave the property owner until March 17th, 2020 to bring the property into compliance. As of today, the property is still in violation. March 10th of 2020, the property owner submitted a permit application to change the sign from a pole sign to a pylon sign. The permit was denied due to the property owner applying as an owner-builder when a contractor is required. March 17th of 2020, the property owner sent a rendering of a new sign via email to city staff. The property owner was informed to correspond directly with the building official regarding permitting and approval of sign permit application. The property owner stated he was letting us know the sign modification is being worked on and will be completed. The property owner then asked for more time. On September 1st of 2020, staff contacted the property owner inquiring on the status of the pole sign conversion.
Can you back up to that last
Sure.
slide for a moment? And I'm just soaking this in. So the owner applied as an owner builder. You can't do that. You need a contractor, a licensed contractor needed. And then on the 17th, was the new rendering, was that from a licensed contractor?
It was from a sign company. Yeah.
Okay. And so we can presume that sign company would have been licensed to
Yes, they
construct
were.
signs. Okay. And then, and so we being the city, then on September 1st, 2020, inquired about the status. Okay, I'm up to date now. You can proceed.
On December 25th of 2020, the property owner responded to staff inquiring, stating he would have the sign brought into compliance sometime in January. He also stated he had a new contractor to do the covering. September 15th of 2022, a notice of hearing was sent to the property owner. September 26th of 2022, the hearing was canceled due to Hurricane Ian. September 27th of 2020, the property owner contacted staff and informed us he was planning on attending the September hearing and was wondering if a square wrap will meet the code requirement. Staff responded to the property owner and informed him of the code requirements regarding pylon sign. On October 11th of 2022, the property owner contacted staff and stated he was going to do something a little more decorative. However, he was having trouble emailing the drawing. October 13th of 2022, staff responded to the property owner reiterating he needed a contractor to apply for the permit. Once again, this was just a pole sign just to show
Yeah.
you, to refresh your memory from this morning or from earlier today.
That's right.
There's the pylon sign.
And is the definition of a pole sign and a pylon sign both in 94.1?
Yes.
Okay, I would suspect so.
Yes. 94.1 definition covers everything.
Right, I would imagine so. Okay.
Mhm. This is the sign as it appeared in February 25th of 2020 when this was first presented to you. Oops, wrong one. And
Okay.
this is the sign as it looks today. As you can tell.
No change. Right. Could you go back to the picture for a moment? Does it, and so this is the slide-in sports bar and grill is the business. Actually, it looks like there are three different businesses here.
Yes, sir.
We have the slide-in, that's the bar and grill. And then we have the cafe,
Yes,
Monte
sir.
Carlo. And then it looks like a grooming business, Shear Canine. Canine.
Yes, sir.
Shear Canine, okay. And then just a question, the pylon, does the 12-inch expanse, does it have to be in the middle or could it be on the side?
It can be on the side.
Okay,
The code does not dictate what it's
okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that he would not have to remove that entire pole. It would just be a matter of disguising the pole, turning it into a pylon.
Yes, sir.
I got it. Okay. All right, and has there been any new, is there any outstanding, or let me phrase it another way, is there any pending application to bring the sign into conformity?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, is there, is Mr. Notary or anyone here on his behalf here to speak? Mr. Notary? You could please just introduce yourself, state your name and your address.
Mike Notary, 2465 Green Drive.
Okay. Go ahead, you may proceed.
I just need some more time.
Okay, how much more time do you need to get this into compliance?
Or get it done. So within a month, I think I should be able to have it finished.
Okay,
Permits and everything.
all right. And this has been kind of hanging out, this was actually,
It's been hanging over my head for a while.
yeah, This is like one of the first, this may have been the very first case I ever had when I became special magistrate. So it's been
Oh,
a
is that
couple,
right?
so it's
Yeah.
been a couple years.
I think my first time here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember you appearing, when it was initially brought before me.
Originally, we were gonna do it ourselves. I had my dad's contractor, we were gonna just do it and do it ourselves. We had some other stuff going on, it got pushed to the back.
Does your dad have a contractor's license?
Yeah, yeah,
He would have been, um, he could have done it, is what you're telling me.
yeah,
Okay.
we could have, yeah.
Okay, but it looks like along the way, you did have a sign contractor. Look at this, they provided a rendering. Any reason why that sign contractor did not proceed?
They gave us a price,
Uh-huh.
and then the price almost doubled. And so
Right.
that was a little frustrating, and I went back to them and said, look, I'm not going with you guys.
Okay,
And it's been kind of jumping back and forth between us doing it with my dad's license, and then just go ahead and pay a signing company and have them do it.
Okay.
But right now, I'm working on some pieces. I got some stuff made up. I'll get it permitted. I'll get a contractor and get it permitted.
Okay.
and I'll be doing it. Get this put together.
yeah, I would ask you to do that. And it looks like, the city's been pretty patient with you in getting this done, but now it's come to me, and you actually had an extra month with the hurricane to try to get the
Right.
rest too.
I've been down a few times. I've come here a few times and saw you that way. Because it's a commercial property, I need to get a regular contractor to do it.
Okay. But your dad has a contract. Is your dad licensed to do?
And that's the other thing, my dad doesn't have that license anymore.
Oh, he does
So,
not. So
yeah.
you definitely need, okay. All right. Any other mitigating circumstances I ought to take into consideration?
I mean, other than what went on with the sign company, not really.
Yeah, I mean, things are probably even more expensive now than they were 2 years ago, had you just
So I'm
acted
back
on
on
it. then.
to, we're gonna do it ourselves.
But you
Yeah,
cannot.
I've gotta get a contractor to do it, to be able to sign off to the drawings that we're putting together.
Okay,
But I do see this thing being finished within a month.
okay. All right, well, all right. Well, thank
Number
you,
one
sir.
priority.
Number one priority, okay. Thank you very much. Any response from the city?
Yes, city has a recommendation. I actually, after speaking with Mr. Notary, I actually changed our recommendation.
Okay.
And this is just a recommendation from the city. Of course, rule on anything.
Sure.
The recommendation is to find based on the evidence, based on the testimony and evidence submitted at this hearing, staff respectfully request the magistrate to find the respondent in violation of the findings of facts and conclusions of law and order, and institute a fine $50 for the first day, $25 every day thereafter until permit is applied for and obtained. Then place the lien on hold until permit expiration. Lien starting today.
Okay, well, wait, 1 second. So $50 for day one, $25 a day thereafter until the permit is applied for
And obtained.
and obtained, okay?
Then place the lien on hold until permit expiration.
Okay,
Lien starting today. And then if everything goes according to plan, like the property owner has informed us today, good faith lien reduction, once approval of final inspection, the city is going to come to you with a lien reduction and support it.
and it's, Yeah, the lien reduction, of course, is a recommendation that I would make.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it's the city council that decides that in the end. But just a couple of things about the city's recommended course here. The my initial findings of fact, conclusions of law and order required that the sign be brought into compliance by March 17, 2020. Are you saying, is the city saying that the fines ought to start from that date, from March 17, 2020? Because we're talking 2 years now.
Yes, sir. I've decided to concede and start the lien as of today to help Mr. Notary. The findings of fact, you instructed the property owner to bring the property into compliance at a certain date. If you wish that be the date, then the city is willing to accept that also.
Okay, so this, to me, this seems very generous. The city is saying, so instead of running these fines from March 17, 2020, that will instead start running the fines from today. So it's not to put as much of a financial burden on Mr. Notary. Okay. All right. I think that sounds very generous to me. And let me go ahead and tell you what I'm gonna order. Is there anything else before I do so?
No, sir, that's all.
All right, thank you. So anyway, I've heard evidence, arguments, and testimony this evening in accordance with the case of Massey versus Charlotte County. And I'm going to issue the following findings of fact. This evening, I'll incorporate into an order that I'm going to issue in writing tomorrow. That the initial findings of fact, conclusions of law and order, which were dated February 25th, 2020, were served on Mr. Notary via certified mail with a return receipt indicating receipt on March 19, 2020. And there were various communications along the way about bringing this sign into conformity with the code. Find that the subject property does have a non-conforming pole sign, and that pole sign is in violation of Section 94-121 of the City Code, which does require conversion into a pylon sign. Or I find that all notices that were provided to Mr. Notary complied with Section 2-253 of the City Code and the Florida Statutes, Chapter 162. I find that the city lawfully enacted its sign regulations in a narrowly tailored, content-neutral manner to improve the city's aesthetics, which I find to be a legitimate government interest. I find that the ordinance that amortized non-conforming pole signs was fair and reasonable. That the respondent has had several years to bring the sign into compliance, at least 6 years, I believe. Find that the violation is continuing even today, and that as of this evening, no application has been applied. My original order said that I shall issue a fine for $100 for the first day or $50 for each day thereafter that it remains in violation, and that the compliance date was set as March 17, 2020. But I find that the city, in speaking with Mr. Notary, has made a determination that I shared. Mr. Notary is intent on correcting the violation, that he intends to proceed in good faith, and that because of the city's revised recommendation, that the fines, instead of running from and accruing from March 17, 2020, they will instead run and accrue from today, which is the 25th of October, And those fines are hereby adjusted, and I have inherent authority to do that. It'll be $50 from day one, and then it'll be $25 for each day thereafter until the permit is applied for and obtained. And so there's a huge incentive to get this done as quickly as you can, Mr. Notary. Once the permit is obtained, the fines shall be suspended. The accruing fines shall be suspended. So let's say, let me give you an example. If fines accrue to $350, I just pulled that number out of thin air. Then at the time that the permit is issued, the fines stop at $350 until the expiration of that permit. And so for however long that permit is out there for you to take advantage of, is it 6 months? Is that how long typical permit is?
Yes, sir. The original time limit on a permit is 6 months, and then it gets extended each 6 months during inspection.
Okay.
Passing.
All right. And so long as that permit is valid and pending, those the accrual of fines are going to freeze. If, however, the non-conforming sign is not corrected by the end of that permit period, then all bets are off, and that initial freeze will be disregarded, and the $25 a day fines are going to continue as if they'd never been frozen. So the incentive is to get this done as quickly as you can. You don't want that permit to expire without the work having been done. And that's how we're going to proceed. And just for, because this is commercial property, it's non-homestead, if these not taken care of and the fines are out there on the property, there is the possibility of foreclosure. There is every interest to get this done, get it fixed, get it done as soon as you can. So, is there any other business for this evening? All right. In that case, I'm gonna we'll adjourn the meeting at 10.